Welcome back to our Wealthy Mindset, where we talk about all things money, mindset, and business. It's your host, Cindy, your fractional CFO and financial bestie. And today I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Dr. Bisleen Attli. She's a cognitive behavioral therapy certified naturopathic doctor and TEDx speaker who helps high achievers optimize their brain health and unlock their full potential. Through her private practice and online advocacy, she has helped thousands of people break free from anxiety, burnout, and limiting beliefs. She combines evidence based naturopathic care with powerful mindset tools to help clients heal the dysfunctions of their body, break through limiting beliefs, and create the life they know they were meant to live. She's also the co founder of All About Mental Empowerment, an organization that brings mental health education to schools through workshops for teachers, parents, and students. Dr. Bisleen's passion for brain health stems from her personal journey with anxiety and depression in her late teens and early 20s. After transforming her own mental health and unlocking her potential, she's now on a mission to impact a million lives. She believes your brain is your most powerful organ, and when it's well taken care of, you become unstoppable. I've had the opportunity to work with Dr. Bisleen for the last 2 years as well. I call her my life coach because she just has this way of just breaking everything down in such simple ways and makes you think like life is supposed to be fun. Stop taking everything so seriously. And I feel like I can go to her and talk to her about anything. She's also offering free strategy calls for all the listeners. So all her details will be shared in the show notes. And yeah, let's get into it. Hi, Bisleen. Thanks for joining me on her Wealthy Mindset today.
Hi, Cindy. I'm so excited to be here.
Could you share a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm also certified in cognitive behavioral therapy. I focus on brain health slash mental health mostly in my practice. So I do a lot of mindset work just as much as I teach people how to optimize their body. So I do a ton of mindset work. And that's why I'm so excited to be here today because, I believe that financials and how we take care of our money and it's just it shows our mindset and our belief shows up in all these different areas of our life. And oftentimes when I talk to people about their health, sometimes I'll have conversations about money, and it's because everything's essentially connected, right?
Yeah, I feel like I didn't really understand that until I started working with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you start to realize and see that actually the same pattern that I have with my health or how I take care of myself, it's also the
Yeah.
same thing in my relationships and same thing with money as well.
Yeah, totally. I feel like we've had a lot of conversation around that teenage girl mindset. Why do you
Yeah.
think so many of us, like even as grown women running 6 to 7 figure
Yeah.
businesses, why do we still operate spending money from like impulse and emotion?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, part of that, I feel like also has to do with like our brain and how it functions, right? Our brain
Right.
loves easy dopamine hits. And we live in a day and age where easy dopamine hits are literally at right at our fingertips, aka starting with our phones. And it's just when we also, I find that if we don't also have different ways of learning how to cope with our emotions and hard things in life, our brain tends to turn towards those easy dopamine hits even more. So like food, turning towards alcohol, drugs, shopping, spending money. I know
Right.
that for a really long time, like in my life, I used to spend money on the stupidest things. And I look back at myself and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wish at like 16 I started like saving even just like $100 a week. And I know that my savings would have been totally in a different place now. But unfortunately, also, I just didn't have the education. And I think that's the other big piece, too. I think that depending on what, cultural background that you've grown up in and what education you have around the finances can play just such a big role. Because I know that I really didn't get that education, and it was something that I had to really go out of my way to just get.
Yeah, I totally understand. Like, even with myself being in the finance space, I feel like I could help everyone else. But when it came to myself, it's just like I just had this block, and it wasn't until I actually like worked through it and figured out like where it's coming from.
Yeah. And it's that like limiting beliefs work, right?
Yeah.
And seeing that relationship with money, how we see money as. I think I love that question of, I think you've had this question too before, is like, if money was a person, how would you describe it? And I think that's
Right.
just like such an interesting question because it really allows you to see how you see money and ultimately how money like sees you.
That totally makes sense because I feel like there's so much like scarcity mindset when it comes to like getting clients, getting money coming in every month, and it's just like in and out every single month, a more reactive state.
Yes, exactly. When we're acting from that reactive state, we know that we tend to attract those like reactive situations too, right?
Yeah. Do you have any tips for the listeners to identify if they're operating from that teenage girl mindset and what they could do?
Hmm. So definitely. And it's almost just like think of how a teenager or like someone who is, like younger and immature acts. And as much as some of us would not like to put ourselves into that category, that's essentially what it kind of is. So
Right.
looking at like, are you avoiding like doing the hard things? Are you avoiding like sitting down and, you avoid your bank statements or you avoid looking at a budget and starting that and that avoidance type behavior? Do you impulsively spend to feel better? And so it could be that you're feeling sad and then you find yourself in Aritzia and you're like, you've bought a couple of shirts that you didn't even need. Or you just, you find yourself spending as a way to just cope with your emotions. It could also come out in other ways too if you have a business, right? So maybe you are not charging your worth or you're giving discounts quite often instead of really standing your ground like an adult should. If you feel like you're seeking that validation through that material success or that overachieving piece of things, right? Because we are seeking that validation through these things, again, it's acting on that almost like that immature mindset, right? Because you don't have the self-awareness to see how you are impulsively spending. So I feel like that's kind of like a good place to start and looking at some of those behaviors and being like, does these behaviors align with that like adult or that highest self, or do these behaviors align with someone who's like impulsive, acting on automatic, not really thinking about consequences, aka every teenager ever, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like the awareness piece is really big. And then when someone has like the awareness, what's like the next step?
Yes. And next up specifically in terms of like they've
Just
realized
like
they are the
working
teenager.
through it. Yeah, like I know journaling helps for me and like working with you, but is there any like practical tips like someone can just do on their own?
Yeah, good question. I really think the best place to start when you have that awareness, it's really I would say nervous system regulation would be probably one of the first pieces to start because what's happening is that when we find ourselves in that like teenage girl mindset and this Cindy as well as like your nervous system gets regulated to these states of
Right.
being. And what starts to happen is that state of being of that teenage girl mindset is like you're automatic. And when we act on automatic, that means our sympathetic nervous system is on. And we want to take you out of that sympathetic state and into the parasympathetic state so that you can then be conscious about who you're showing up as. And so many of us, we'll get the strategies, learn the tools, but then we won't regulate our nervous system. And as a result of that, we're not able to consciously think
Mhm.
about who we're becoming in that moment and who we're being in that moment. And so I feel like the first step has to be that nervous system regulation, aka taking a pause. So when you notice yourself that need for impulse, like, wanting to impulsively spend come up, pause. When you notice that avoidance behavior of like you're supposed to look at your bank statements, but you're just like, oh, I don't want to look at it, pause
Yeah.
and really take a step back in those moments and ask yourself and look at what is that version of yourself that's showing up. And the more times you can pause before acting, the more you can actually be in control of your actions.
That's so helpful. And I think another thing you've really helped me with is like being intentional. So like before you start anything, understand like why you're doing it and what your purpose is. And I feel like that helps you reframe as well.
Yes. Yeah, completely agree because so many of us we're not intentional about anything, really.
No.
And again, part of being intentional is also just like slowing down. And I think too, it's so great. Like if people want to really change their relationship up with money, is looking at the purpose behind it. Like, why do you want to change your relationship up with money? And I always say when you want to look for like a purpose, you want to get to that point where like it like makes you feel an emotion. I remember the other day I was talking to one of my patients and she wanted to lose weight, and I was like, why do you want to lose weight? Aside from like
Mhm.
looking good in your clothes and all these things. And she was like, I want to stay alive long enough to be with my grandkids, to play with my
Oh,
grandkids.
wow.
And she started crying when she said that. I was like, that's it. That's how you know you've hit that like purpose. So if you feel like you're really struggling with the relationship with money and you want to change it, find a purpose that actually evokes like a strong emotion within you. And once you felt that strong emotion, you'll have a strong enough willpower to move forward.
Yeah, I feel like people just run on autopilot and like the online space, it's like get the 100K months, get the $1 million, but people don't really understand their why.
I know exactly. And that's so important because it's tough. Cindy, you and I know that better than anybody. Like, it's just being entrepreneurs, like, it's tough, right? And you're gonna have
Right.
those days where that just make you question, like, why am I even doing this? And if you don't have that strong enough purpose to evoke that emotional response, you're not gonna keep going.
What's one reframe you would offer to someone who keeps saying like I'm just bad with money or like I grew up this way?
Yeah, that's very much the fixed mindset, victim
Yeah.
mindset. And I know it's so easy to fall into that mindset because what ends up happening is that you take away all responsibility, essentially, from
Right.
yourself. And it's so much easier to not take responsibility because then you have someone else to blame as to why you're not good with money. And I think another way to reframe it is that it's not that you're bad with money, it's that your nervous system was just never taught to feel safe with it. And so when we're not taught to feel safe around money and with money, we will constantly find ways to sabotage it. And when you start to see it in this way, you see it as like a skill that can be learned. That safety can be built over time around money so that you feel comfortable handling large sums of money and feeling like you can trust yourself with it.
That totally makes sense. And I feel like it's just like a skill. Like people hire like marketing coaches, sales coaches, but like working on your finances isn't so glamorized. So I feel like people just avoid it, but it's like the most important part of running a business.
Completely. And I think a part of us also believe that we should just know how to do
Yeah.
it. But no. Like, how are you supposed to know how to handle like hundreds of thousands of dollars? Like, we weren't taught any of this, or like what to actually do with your money, where it actually goes, how to make your money work for you. Like, these aren't things that you're taught, and you need to actually learn that from someone who's experienced in it.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like it applies to like anybody. Like you see celebrities like Lindsay Lohan, like just like blow through her money. You even see like people winning the lottery, they blow through it. And it's just like it's just a skill set like everyone needs to learn regardless of who you are.
Exactly. And I think those are such great examples to show like those celebrity examples of people who have just like completely blown through their money because we think that having more money will just magically make us smarter and more responsible. But the money problems you have at earning $5,000 a month, if you don't work through it, you will continue to have them at $5 million a year. And it's like if you don't learn to manage the money you have now in a well way, that's the other thing too,
Yeah.
Cindy. I feel like a lot of people say that they are going to learn this skill when they have more money.
Yeah.
But it's
But
like
they
if you
don't.
can't learn how to manage $2,000, first of all, who says the universe is going to give you $10,000 a month if you can't manage two,
So
right?
true.
Right? And so it's like, and if you can't practice those skills now, like it took me a very long time to get to this place of having these automatic savings because I was always like, okay, I'm gonna earn more money, and then I'll save more. But it's like,
Yeah.
no, you have to start doing that work now because if you don't do it now, you're not gonna do it when you're making more money.
That's so true.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny the things that we say to ourselves to avoid just doing the hard work. Being fully honest, the things we say to ourselves to avoid doing anything hard.
Yeah, it's crazy because now like I compare like managing money and your relationship with money the same as like losing weight or like taking care of yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. And the parallels in all of that, it's so similar.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Something I've been hearing a lot about is like the reticular activating system and like
Mhm.
how that can help you really shift your mindset around things. Could you share a little bit about like what that is?
Yeah, I love the reticular activating system. So essentially what it is, it's like it's your brain's filtration system in the simplest form to put it. And what ends up happening is that in your day-to-day world, it's essentially whatever you believe to be true. It's almost like that area of your brain is almost like the Google for your brain, right? And it's always
Hmm.
looking It's always looking and confirming what you're actually searching subconsciously. And so, for example, if you believe money is hard to get, your reticular activating system will always look for reasons as to why it's hard to get. Or if you feel like you can just never keep money, your reticular activating system will keep looking for those reasons. And so, this is why understanding your subconscious beliefs, how you see money to be, your relationship with money is so important to uncover, because ultimately, on an everyday basis, your reticular activating system is constantly looking for reasons to fulfill that belief and to make that be true.
That totally makes sense. So, like, would you recommend, like, first thing in the morning saying, like, positive affirmations or, like, thinking a certain way before you start?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, I'm honestly a very big fan of doing things like that. I specifically love visualization. I think it's just such a powerful way to start the day. Like, I love to wake up in the morning, do like a 10-minute visualization of my day specifically. And then,
Mhm.
like, 2, 3 long term goals that I have, I'll like spend a couple of minutes visualizing those goals. I think, though, truly where the real magic comes is, as much as it's great to have like a morning routine, I feel like the real magic comes in terms of how you show up during the day. Because a lot of us think that if we do these affirmations once in the morning, or that visualization, that we're set, we're good. But then you get lost in the chaos of the day, and the day ends and you're like, oops, I was supposed to be this version of myself that I set the intention for in the morning, and I wasn't anything close to that. And so I really think the real magic is like, throughout the day, you need to be having some sort of like nervous system regulation activities, just to help bring the awareness back and to remind your brain what it is that you're working towards. So whether it be like a reminder on your phone that you set up of like an abundance affirmation that shows up during your day, or you take mini breaks throughout the day to, regulate your nervous system and set a good intention for yourself. I think in the manifesting world, it's called segment intending, that activity,
Mhm.
which I
Yeah.
absolutely love. And for those of you that don't know what it is, it's essentially you set your day up into little segments. And every time you're going to start a new segment of the day, you take 2 to 3 deep breaths and set the intention for that. So literally right before that's getting on this podcast recording, I took like 2 to 3 deep breaths and set an intention of the version of myself I wanted to show up as. And then after this podcast, whatever I move on to next, gonna do that again. And so I think the key really is making sure you're pulling yourself back to that identity throughout the day.
That's so helpful. What advice would you give someone that just runs like on autopilot and is so reactive to everything going on throughout the day?
Yeah. So that's where you got to hone down on the nervous system that much more. And I think initially what's really helpful is if you're just like maybe your nervous system is just so shot, or you're just so much in the sympathetic, it's so hard for you to be aware. Set the reminders up. I always tell all my patients that any new habit you try to start, your brain's not going to remember it. And that's
Mm.
because your brain is so used to like the past habit. And so you need to have these reminders. So again, that looks like either on your phone, reminders coming up. Will constantly change my phone screen to kind of match whatever it is I'm trying to remind myself of in the moment. Or you can put sticky notes up on your computer or in your car. And so the more reminders that you can just kind of give to yourself to either take a breath, or the word is abundance, or whatever that kind of pulls you back into that version of yourself, is going to be really helpful. And it just has to be as simple as that. And then what you'll start to notice is over time, your brain and your body kind of automatically turn to that place, because you've now just trained your brain so much with all these reminders.
Wow, that's so powerful.
Yeah, simple, so simple, but so powerful.
So why do you keep seeing like evidence of lack, failure, or chaos even when we're making more money? How much of that is mindset and how much would be like our nervous system just trying to keep us safe?
Yeah, good question. So I think that definitely can be a combination of things. Um, I think we also have to keep in mind too, like, unfortunately, our society doesn't support us ever feeling good enough. Because I mean, if we did, what would we spend money on? And I feel like so much of consumerism is tied to feeling like you're not enough and what you have isn't enough. And I think what's really important is just us having that understanding that we're not living in a world that's designed to make us feel enough. Our world is unfortunately designed to make us constantly feel not good enough. So, what does that mean for us? It literally means on an everyday basis, we have to support ourselves and giving ourselves permission to feel enough as we are. And I think too, there has to be just like that fine like balance too of deciding like what is enough so that we're not like too easygoing on ourselves, but like also
Yeah,
not too hard on ourselves. But I really do think that, one of the biggest reasons we keep seeing lack despite more money is because of social media, right?
right,
And some of these
100%.
outside external circumstances, like you could be making $1 million a year, but then you go on social media and someone's making two. And all of a sudden you're feeling
Yeah,
like your $1 million or your business is not enough. Right? So,
that's so
so
true.
easy. So easy. And I think a part of that too also is our nervous system support as well, right? And really deciding what is that amount for us that feels good enough and safe. I think it's so important too that everybody just sit down and like look at, okay, what's the type of lifestyle you want and what is the amount of money that's needed for that lifestyle? And once you feel like you're making that much, like give yourself permission to feel good enough. Everything after that is just a win.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what's going on in the external world or like who's making more than you because you're happy with what you have.
Exactly. And I think nobody actually sits down to think about what is it that makes them feel good and them feel happy. So much of our happiness and what is enough is actually based off of other people's enough.
Yeah, I feel like people are just losing like a sense of self.
Exactly. Exactly. And then all of a sudden you've built something and then you're just like so
I
deeply
don't even like
unsatisfied
it.
with it because it just like it wasn't even what I actually wanted.
Yeah, or even building a business that like you're working with a business coach to tell you what to do and it's like that's what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Without even taking a step back and being like, is this what I actually want to do?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like in the coaching world, it's a lot of like, this has worked for me. This is what you need to do. Do you find like your clients come to you and they're just looking for the answer versus like doing the work?
Yes and no. I feel like when I do my discovery calls with people, I very much like, give them that sense of reality of like you are gonna have to put in the work. Like my patients and clients have achieved amazing results, but that's because they put in the work. And the ones who haven't, they haven't put in that work. And so I feel like I always let them know in that discovery call, like if you want to work with me, it means like things are gonna shift and I'm gonna challenge you and push you, as you know very well, Cindy. But that's because I love and care about my clients so much and want them to be successful. But for sure, again, I especially find, in that health world, like, right, everybody's looking for that one magic thing or key that's going to fix it all. I remember a couple of months ago, I worked with a patient who was like, I want to feel my best with doing as minimum work as possible. And I was like, that's not possible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and at one visit, he was like, "But I just don't want to do anything." And I was like, "Then you can't feel better. You're going to be stuck in that
Right.
same spot."
Yeah.
And eventually we had to part ways because he just wasn't willing to put in that work, and that's up to him, right? So I think that it's that people are looking for that answer, but I think that when they see they're going to have to put in that work or they're not going to see a difference, like they quickly start to change their minds.
Yeah, totally. And what made you get into like the brain health work as like naturopath?
Yeah, so a lot of that has to do with my personal history with mental health struggles. Like I talk about, I struggled with depression when I was in my teens and early 20s. And, I feel like the conventional medical care system just didn't give me that support that I really needed. And so I started to turn towards, more so working on my diet and my movement and sleep and supplements. And through it, I discovered like naturopathic medicine. And I also started to feel so much better when I really incorporated that mind and body piece together. And so that's why I'm such a big believer in that, if you really want great brain health, you have to support your mind and body at the same time in order to really feel your best.
That's so helpful and powerful. And I've
Oh,
been working with you for the
yeah.
last 2 years, and I feel like you've pushed me so much to get out of my comfort zone in such
Yeah.
like a healthy way.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Cindy. It's been such a pleasure working with you and really just seeing you grow and transform these past few years. It's been truly incredible.
Thank you. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about like self-sabotage. So
Hmm.
like I feel like it comes up when things going well. Like I know for myself too, like everything's going great and I book a session with you and I'm just like this, and you're like, what about all the good things happening right now? Like you're just self-sabotaging.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's so that whole self-sabotage piece is so tough because honestly, I struggle with it too. Everybody struggles to it
Yes.
to some extent. And I truly think like the underlying piece of it is just so many of us have honestly a low tolerance for what
Mhm.
feels good and giving ourselves permission to feel good. I think part of that also kind of goes back to what we talked about before, how we live in a world that thrives on us feeling like we're constantly not good enough. And so when we do have moments where we start to feel good enough, it's almost like our brain goes like, whoa,
What's going
something
on?
is so wrong. Let's screw it up. Go binge eat or drink, or, go spend all your money that you worked so hard for. And so it's so common. And I really believe it's because our threshold of what we believe we're allowed to deserve in life is really low, which is so unfortunate when you think about
Mhm.
it. And again, and I noticed my struggle with it too. And I'm just like, oh, I work so hard. And like, why did I just do that to myself? And so I think part of that also goes back to, as much as we try to take a look at, okay, what am I doing in my life when things aren't going well? I think what we need to start looking at even more so is, what am I doing in my life when things are going well? Because I believe that we sabotage ourselves so much more when things are going well. I also think part of this too is we have a lot of deep rooted beliefs around what it takes to be successful. I know you can relate to this. I can definitely relate to this too,
Yeah,
right? Believing that success needs to be hard. And
right.
so we find a way to make things harder than they need to be. Or we, sabotage our success because it felt too easy. And we need to get ourselves into that struggle, stress state in order to work, right? A lot of us, we
Yeah.
thrive when we're really stressed out. And so that's a big one for me. I've been really trying to break out of, is like, I feel like I constantly need to get myself stressed out in order
Mhm.
to work,
Yeah.
when that doesn't have to be the case at all. You can also work when you feel good.
Yeah, totally. I feel like because right now I'm in like a transition stage where I'm going more into fractional CFO, getting rid of a lot of tax clients, and it's just been like very calm and peaceful. And it's just like I'm not used to it. Like I have more time to
Exactly.
like actually work out and take care of myself. And like my mind's just like, what are you doing? Like June 30th tax deadline's coming up, and like I've never been so relaxed and like chilled out.
And it feels so weird because
Yeah, it
you're so
does.
like, it makes you feel like I need to be working every second of my day in order
Mhm.
to feel like I deserve any of the success that I'm getting with my business.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you and I have talked about like when I've been in a line with myself, taking care of myself, like I've had so much more money come in, more clients during that time versus like busy tax season when I'm like stressed out to the max and
Yeah.
working so hard.
Yep, 100%. That's why I'm also such a big believer in, like, taking care of yourself truly is what unlocks abundance. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that, especially with the whole, like, I feel like this whole manifesting movement, which
Mm.
honestly I'm a huge fan of. I'm like so delulu and I love it. But I also feel like people are like skipping steps. And it's just like, how are you going to manifest anything if you're waking up and feeling slow and sluggish, if you have no energy, if you haven't pooped
Right.
in a week, right? You're literally holding all the toxins in your body because you haven't pooped in a week. And so it's going to be so hard to manifest from that space. And I believe that getting yourself in your best shape, feeling your best is like that key that unlocks all of that abundance. And see, you've seen it for sure, Cindy, right? Every time
Yeah.
you get back into that groove of taking care of yourself, it just unlocks that level of abundance that much more.
Yeah, it's so crazy. What's like the
Mhm.
first step someone can do like to take care of themselves? Would it start with like food or just like even something simple as just like walking every day?
Yeah, great question. I feel like the first best thing is to like do like the simplest thing that feels really easy to you. That could look like you just drinking more water. So many
Mhm.
of us are dehydrated. It's like so simple, some of these things. Like
Yeah.
literally being dehydrated, you reduce like every percent that you're dehydrated reduces your brain function by 1 or 2%. It's actually so wild.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So even just like doing little simple things like making sure you're getting enough water, or like you said, just like maybe starting to just go on more walks and get more movement. I'm sure all of us could use that, right? Maybe it looks like
Right.
you just eating a vegetable. I have so many conversations about eating vegetables in my practice. So it looks like maybe just having more vegetables and having more of that just variety in your diet. And really starting off with the simplest things. And the thing too is that all of us kind of know what we need to do to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
We all know it. And so it's just really just like picking one of those things and just really committing to it. That's the big key.
Yeah, I remember you had helped me like use the habit app and then saying like focus on one thing per quarter before you start to add like more things onto it. Because I know
Mhm.
like think of like 75 hard or like these diets and restrictions. It's like you need the steps, you need the workouts, you need to eat a certain number of calories, and then it just becomes so overwhelming.
Yeah. And then it's so hard to maintain that long term. I work with as much as I work in brain health, I do support my patients with other things too. And when it comes to weight loss is another big thing. And whenever I talk to my patients about weight loss, I always ask them, okay, you've done all these things. What have you done for 6 months? And
Yeah.
no, I have yet to have someone say yes to me on any of the things you've tried that you've done it consistently for 6 months. No one has. And that's the thing, is because these diets and restrictions are just way too difficult and way too restrictive. And so it's like choosing one thing. You said, like, literally master it for like at least a good month. Do it at least a
Yeah.
quarter and then just build on each habit one by one. It becomes so much easier that way.
Yeah, that's something I definitely learned from you.
Yeah. Thanks, Cindy.
So how does childhood roles like being the caretaker, the oldest daughter, like how does
Yeah.
that play into your adult like money patterns?
Yeah. Good question. They definitely become dysfunctional adult body patterns for sure. And I think it's important to just recognize what are some of those childhood roles that you feel like you're still taking on. And a first great step is, if you're new to this, is looking at what was that role that you took on within your family. And so, for example, were you like the caretaker? And so, what ends up happening is that when you're in that caretaker role, it's kind of like the people pleaser role a little bit, you
Yeah.
end up over delivering, right? You try to do as much as you can to care for the other person, but then maybe you're not actually charging your worth and you're
Mhm.
undercharging for your services or products. And what ends up happening is that you're giving so much and not getting the same back, you end up potentially burning out long term. Or maybe you had this role of feeling like you were the good girl. And so when you're the good girl, what do? You avoid risks.
Yeah.
You stay small. You constantly fear being too much, and you're constantly adjusting yourself to make sure you're constantly meeting the standards of the people around you and upholding this image of the good girl. But what we all know, as being an entrepreneur, you have to like taking at least some level of a risk, and you have to play a little bit big to be successful. And oftentimes, as an entrepreneur, you have to face that fear of being too much because everyone's going to call you that at some point, essentially. Or maybe you had a different role, and maybe you were like rebellious. So you might overspend to prove your independence, or you might resist structure and you don't really have any sort of routine in your day. And so I think it's so important looking at like what role you played in your family or that label that you had, and looking at what are the dysfunctional ways this label is now showing up in your adult life, because you think you're past that teenage self, but you're honestly probably not.
Not, yeah. And I feel like you end up taking on the wrong type of clients too. It's like you're taking on anybody and everybody just to make money.
Yes, yes. Or you end up meeting clients who match that dysfunctional pattern. So if you're the
Yeah.
caretaker who always like over delivers, you might end up like always having clients who are just very needy, have a lot of like hand holding they need and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Because it just matches that role that you have, right? Because you always attract what you are and what you believe
Yeah.
yourself to be, and everybody else in your life is going to match that energy.
Yeah, I felt like I was being a caretaker for like all my clients.
Mhm, mhm. And then so what's the first thing, like, that really helped you kind of break out of it, Cindy?
I think the awareness piece was really big because I was just like draining myself out. Like I was getting bad migraines, my health was all over the place,
Yeah,
and I just felt like there's like 200 clients like in my head at all times.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. That awareness piece is honestly so key because, again, we're so many of us are just living these, like, money blocks, and we just don't even
Yeah.
realize it.
And I think another thing was like, because like we're so short term with our business, we're only thinking 1 month, 1 year. But what really helped me was like 5 years down the road, like, do I want my business to operate this way? Do I want 200 clients in my head all the time? And it's like, no, you want to
Yeah.
build a business around you and your lifestyle and what you want.
Exactly. And as much as I'm like, sometimes we don't know what life is gonna, I feel like with being an entrepreneur, life just moves so fast. Like
Yeah.
where you think you're gonna be in 5 years might be in a completely different spot. But I still think it's very important to have an overall idea of that, like, 10-year vision and plan. You don't have to have everything exactly mapped out, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe you want to write a book in this time, or what is it that you actually want, and kind of working backwards from that. Like for me, I know that I actually don't ever want an in-person clinic with multiple doctors, which sounds strange. It's like, but you're a doctor. But it's like,
Yeah.
no, I actually have a different vision for what I want to do with my life and the plans that I have. But if I didn't actually think about that, then maybe I would have went down that road, and actually instead of going down the different road that I know I'm actually meant to go down, instead that's a bit more unconventional.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like even with women like wanting kids, it's like, what does your business look like around that? Like, do you have the emergency savings and like the finances set up for that kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And a lot of us, again, we just don't think about these things, which we really
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of women when they have the kids, they just want to burn down the business because they haven't built it in a way that supports their lifestyle during that time.
And it's like, and it's not to say that your business can't. You just need
Yeah.
to find that right system for it. I was listening to a podcast episode this morning, and the guy was talking about one of the most important things that we have in our life that we take for granted is time.
Yeah.
More than money, it's like it's time. And he actually brought up the example, and he was like, he asked people if they would trade places right now with Warren Buffett. He's worth like billions and billions of
Mhm.
dollars, right? And
Right.
so many people are like, no, and it's like, why? Because he's 95 years old.
Right.
And his time is so limited, but he would like give away all his money to replace to be any one of us because of the time that we have. And to bring it back to kind of the conversation that we're talking about right now, I think it's so important that the time that you have today, you start to see it as extremely, extremely valuable, and know that the time that you're spending on things today, they're either building or breaking your future.
That's so true. And I feel like the lifestyle too, like buying homes these days is so expensive. And I feel like so many of us are just like trying to make ends meet, like paying the mortgage, like you're working. And it's like you forget like the big things that really matter, like spending time with your family, going on vacations. Just like you're working so hard to pay off a house that you never spend time in.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's such a shame, and truly it is truly our relationships that make life so fulfilling. And I feel like even just today, listening to that podcast episode, it like kind of brought me back to, because again, it's so easy to get caught up, especially as an entrepreneur, in the hustle and the grind of making
Yeah.
money and your purpose and your vision and all of that. But we truly forget what makes life beautiful is the people that we spend time with. And you can make all the money in the world, but it's like if you have no one to share that with, then
Yeah.
what's the
What's
point
the
of any
point?
of it?
Yeah, so true. Or
Yeah.
you don't end up doing anything with that money and it's just like you're just hoarding.
And you're just hoarding. But it's like, again, what was the point of any of that?
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I even find like with business coaches too, it's like everyone glamorizes like that hustle culture, but it's just like, what do you really want? Like your lifestyle, your business. Like even with finances too, I tell people like your personal spending, your business spending, your income, your offers, like it's gonna look totally different person to person. But yet, like the online space and like the coaches, it's just like, this is what's worked for me. This is what you need to do in order to be successful.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I think again, it's just having that awareness and in peace of mind. And I think so many of us need to take some like alone time to really reflect
Yeah,
away from social
totally.
media and all that stuff, because it's so easy to be like, no, this is exactly what I want. And you realize actually, no, it's because you saw someone on social media doing this, or there's a mentor you look up to that does this, and that's why you really want it.
That's so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like affirmations and like journaling? Like, I
Mhm.
know there's so much like we can use ChatGPT or like just Google some affirmations, but does it really matter if like they're personalized to you? Because it's like you can say like I'm abundant, I'm wealthy, but then it's like it does nothing for you.
Totally. And I think so. I have a bit of a hate love relationship with affirmations. Like, I love them. I think they can be great. But
Yeah.
I think, like, really what we need to start doing is, like, acting based on these affirmations. So, of
Mhm.
course, I think that, you want to find affirmations that actually, like, make you feel some sort of way, right? I think
Right.
anything that evokes an emotional response is always fantastic. So, if you're repeating, I feel abundant, but, like, that doesn't make you feel any sort of way, then you want something a bit more powerful you can say in the moment that
Right.
makes you just like makes you really feel something, right? And I think the other piece here too is so important is that like people repeat affirmations, but then they'll go back to their same patterns. They'll say
That's what I was going to
affirmations
ask
for
you
5 minutes
next.
in the morning, right? They'll say
Right.
affirmations for 5 minutes in the morning, then they'll go back to complaining. They'll go back
Yeah.
to gossiping. They'll go back to binge eating. They'll go back to just doing all the same patterns and behaviors, and then they're like, "Oh my God, my abundant affirmation didn't work." But that's because you didn't
Yeah.
change. It's not enough to just say it. It's like you
Yeah.
need to be that like full embodiment of it. It's almost like seeing it as like a test or a quiz from the universe, right? So you say I'm
Hmm.
abundant, now show up as it. If you
But you're
really
looking for
want
lack.
the universe to give that back to you, show the universe you're worthy of that abundance. Show up like that abundant being. Pass the test and you will get abundance.
I think it's like that quick fix, like we're looking for the instant results.
100% always. It's just like, oh my God, if I repeat affirmations, they're gonna just change everything for me. And it's just like,
Yeah.
no, it's like you need to show up as an affirmation. But I think where it can help sometimes is that just like that constant repetition of it kind of then, really pushes you and gives you the fuel to start showing up as it.
Hmm.
But that literally means I'm abundant, for example, should be on repeat 24/7 in your brain, which doesn't ever happen.
Right. Yeah. Because I
Right?
feel like
Like
you
again,
can do the visualization, you can do like the meditations, but then the rest of the day, like you're on autopilot.
you're not a pilot. You have no idea who you're showing up as or what you're showing up as. And all of a sudden you're just like, oh my God, I'm doing all these things. And trust, I have been there so many times. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm doing all of the things. It's like, okay, great, you're doing the things, but how are you actually being? How are you being in the moments when you aren't doing? And I
Right.
was being like my old autopilot self, and I was failing all the tests. And so I wasn't getting what I actually wanted.
What can you do during that time? Because I have days where I'm doing it and then I'm like aware, and then some days it's like I do like the visualization, I know what I want, and then it's just like autopilot.
Yeah, I think too, what's important as well is just like how you like speak about these things too.
Mhm.
Because, say for example, let me take the weight loss example because I feel like it's the easiest one to think about. Is that if you are trying to, lose weight, when
Yeah.
you really think about your life long term, you're, it's not like you're never not going to binge eat. That's like impossible.
Mhm.
You're definitely over the span of your life, even though you're losing weight, trying to get your best body ever, you're gonna have moments where you overeat a bit too much. But I think too, in those moments, is how you ultimately end up relating to it. And I think that when we start to relate to these slip ups as us, going back to our old identity, us sabotaging us, all these things, doing all these things, I think that then also plays a role in it. So I think it's important too that you start relating to your mess ups in a bit of a different way as well. Like start relating to your slip ups as the highest self would relate to it. And
Yeah.
that would be so different than the version of who you are now because your highest self wouldn't make you feel bad or awful or horrible. It would just be like, it's a slip up. Like, let's move forward.
I totally agree. And I feel like for myself, I struggled with like emotional eating. It's just like when it does come up, it's just like, okay, like I've been doing this for like 30 something years. Like I'm learning something that I've done for so long. Like slip ups
Yeah,
are gonna happen.
exactly. And I mean, they're going to happen potentially like for a very long time. But I think
Yeah.
what happens is that how you relate to them changes and they just start to happen way less frequently. So maybe instead of slipping up once a week, you're slipping up once a month, then it becomes
Mhm.
once every couple of months.
Right. Yeah, it's so helpful.
Yeah.
What's like one belief about success or money that you've had to unlearn?
Oh my God, there's been so many. I think the biggest one that honestly I'm struggling with right now to this day, it's my current belief I'm working on is if I rest, I'll fall behind.
That's
That's
such a good
been,
one.
uh, it's a bad one to be stuck in though, Cindy. It's a bad one to be stuck. Like these that so the past 2 weeks I've had two very close family members get married. I wasn't able to make it to all their events, as you know, in Indian weddings, there's like five, six events in a week, and I
Yeah,
made it to at least 3 to 4 of them in each one. But that's still a lot. It was so much because I was constantly traveling from Toronto back to my parents' place in Brampton and back and forth.
right.
And I really did my best because usually what happens to me is whenever I have fun things come up in my life, I always make myself feel guilty and bad. And then I always feel irritated at everybody else around me. Like, how dare they have a wedding with these many events that took away from my work? And then my irritation comes out onto my family. And so I tried to make sure this time around that, I had all my social media content planned out, stuff with patients was done early, so that this time around I could actually give myself permission to properly enjoy my time off and enjoy the wedding events. And so I've definitely gotten much better at it, but
Yeah.
still, as I'm getting back into my work now, my routine, there's definitely that guilt coming up like, oh, I could have done this and this. I'm like 2 weeks behind now. And so it's definitely a struggle. But again, I feel like this goes just based off of our society, hustle culture, and just not feeling okay, like resting, which is so awful.
Yeah, I feel like I was working like 7 days a week. Even on my rest days, like I'd still have my laptop or I'm thinking about work. And now it's like I have to be creative. Like, what do I want to do on the weekends and kind of plan ahead?
Yes, exactly. And just having something else to do. I'm such a big fan too of business owners having hobbies and
Yeah.
doing things other than work. I definitely need to work on my hobby game a little bit more, but I've joined like the volleyball league, and I got like a paint by numbers kit, just doing other things outside of work. One of my girlfriends who's also a naturopath, her and her boyfriend, they live kind of up north, so they have a beautiful property and they recently got bees. So they're like
Oh,
beekeepers. And she's just been
wow.
really enjoying having that hobby of like taking care of bees. And I know then she does a lot of baking and stuff. And I always like look at her for like hobby stuff because she's
Yeah.
so good with that and having that balance, and I'm not. And I think it's so important that like we also find our value and worth and enjoyment from things outside of just like work. Because
So
it's
true.
because
Yeah.
it's so sad that our entire worth, our happiness is based off of work. And it's just like as a business owner, things are gonna go up and down. And I think just having these things outside of work that bring you enjoyment, that
Mhm.
give you a sense of worthiness and alignment with life is just so important. Like, do you have any hobbies that you do?
I go to like yoga and like F45, but I feel like I
Nice.
need to find more hobbies.
Yeah, yeah, I'm right there with you on that. I need to like experiment. I remember in university when I was trying to really work through my depression, I was like doing it all. I was like
Mhm.
knitting, I was painting, I
Oh,
was doing
wow.
spoken word poetry, and just trying all of these different activities just to see what feels good. And I feel like
Yeah.
I need to definitely get back into some. I'm gonna go to Michael's today and get some like craft stuff or something.
That's such a good idea.
I'm gonna start experimenting with things. You're gonna see me on my Instagram stories with like stickers.
Yeah, I feel like as we get older, we kind of lose like our creativity and like our inner child.
Yeah, and I feel like those are the things that bring us like really the most joy. And whenever I look back at any year, the first thing I always think of is like, why did I work so hard? Like, why was I just like I missed out on some of these things because I was just like overworking. And whenever we look back at the year, it's not like you remember the day where you're like, wow, I spent like 12 hours working that day. No.
Yeah,
We
no.
think about these moments where we did our hobbies, where we spent time with friends and families, where we experienced new things. Like those are truly the things that bring us the most joy.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And now is
Yeah.
like the perfect time with summer.
Yeah, exactly. To like explore stuff, right? This is really it should be time to prepare for winter, right? So try all hobbies now so that you have things to turn towards in winter time essentially.
So true.
Yeah.
What's the best way for like our audience to connect with you? And are you taking on like new patients right now?
Yeah, so I am definitely taking on new clients. So definitely reach out. I offer everybody a free clarity call just so we can talk about your goals, make sure it's the right fit. And where can you find me? I am active on a lot of social media platforms, but I'm probably the most active on Instagram. It's at Dr. Bisleen. But you can also find me on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
I will share Bisleen's details in the show notes. And Bisleen, do you only work with clients in Canada or like all over?
Yeah, great question. So I do work with clients from all over the world. So if you want naturopathic medicine support specifically, you would have to be in Ontario, Canada for me to work with you. But I do offer coaching, mindset coaching support, and that allows me to work with kind of people from all over the world. So definitely, if you're not in Canada or Ontario, Canada, not limited to that at all. And yeah, good question.
Thank you, Bisleen. I highly encourage you to reach out to her. I've been working with Bisleen for the last 2 years, and I feel like you're just like my life like therapist. I feel like
Oh,
I can like come to you about anything, and it's just like you just open my eyes to like so many like different things, and like provide me with like the tools and resources of like dealing with things when they come up.
yeah. Oh, it's been such a pleasure working with you, Cynthia. This was honestly such a great conversation. I feel like fired up after this.
Me too. Thank you
This
so
was
much for joining me today, Bisleen.
Thanks so much for having me.